Ms Legalista here. Thank you for joining. I want to talk about Google searches. Everybody uses, I don't know, use Google, Bing, or something else, Yahoo. I don't know. I only use Google. What do you use when you're doing a search? You're going online and you're trying to find something. Most of us use Google. I should have looked up what the percentage is so that I could tell you about it. But how do you know what you're clicking on is the place you thought you were going to? Now, I think a lot of us know that, some of this stuff that pops up is not the real deal. We know that. But I want to take you to this new article so that we can talk a little bit more in depth about what is actually going on here so that you can do some things to try to keep yourself a little more safe when you're out there doing these searches. Is it more safe or safer? Safer, I think is the word. This report is in CNBC. It says Google searches are becoming a bigger target of cyber criminals with the rise of malvertising. Who comes up with these? Like, I think we need a whole new definition now. We've got spoofing and smishing and phishing and rug pulling and pig butchering. And now we have malvertising. What in the world is malvertising? Well, I think we can probably all figure it out that it's some bad advertising that's not what you want to use. That's probably about right. All right, key points in this article that we're going to be talking about. It says malvertising or hackers using online ads for malicious purposes are on the rise. I don't think any of us are surprised by that. These rogue ads can appear as sponsored content. See, that's the key right there. During a search engine query or even hidden in ads that appear on mainstream websites and target big companies from Lowe's to Slack. Experts suggest you avoid clicking on sponsored links that come up during an internet search and to keep your browser and operating system updated. Here's the thing, these companies are paying for these sponsored positions so that they're up there at the top. And the last thing that we should be doing is clicking on them. If you see that, then go to the real site. Go to the site. That's what I do. I usually scroll down so that I get to the site. Okay, let's see what we're talking about here. It says hackers are increasingly using online ads for malicious purposes. Often it's happening through routine Google searches. Just you out there looking up, some recipe or something, and you think you're going to recipe.com, and there's a sponsored post above it that has something in there about recipe.com, but it's really not recipe.com. It's a link to take you someplace else. These schemes are dubbed malvertising. That's the word you need to learn. You guys, it's a whole dictionary, right? And cyber criminals are striking more often and with increased sophistication. And I've talked a little bit about this before. I feel like my camera needs to be over more this way because I'm over more this way. Or is it over more this way? I think it's over more this way. Okay, there we go. That was bothering me. It says here, now I gotta get back on track. These schemes are dubbed malvertising. Okay, increased sophistication is where I was. Now, here's the deal. They are now setting up whole websites. They have links and everything to make it look official, like it's legitimate, like it's not some sort of spam site or fraud site or scam designed to take your money. They look legitimate now. It's as they're getting sophisticated. In fall 2023, cybersecurity software firm Malwarebytes tracked a 42% increase month over month. Y'all, that's a lot. In malvertising incidents in the US, all types of brands are being targeted, whether it's for phishing purposes or actual malware. What I'm seeing is just the tip of the iceberg. This is what one of the senior director of research said at that company. It says many of these rogue ads appear as sponsored content during a search engine query on a desktop or mobile device, but malicious code can also be hidden in the ads that appear on mainstream websites consumers routinely visit. So that's the thing, okay? So we're kind of used to seeing, the sponsored piece above, the real Lowe's.com, and then there'll be the sponsored one, something else, Lowe's.com. And we go, oh, yeah, I'm not going to do the sponsored one. I'm going to click on the real one. Or I'm not going to do CNN, this little sponsored thing here. I'm going to go down to the real CNN.com. But then It's all of the advertising around it. You know how when you scroll to the very bottom, you get finished reading your article and you'll see these sponsored articles underneath, the sponsored ads, the advertising alongside. That's what we're talking about. Now, how often do you click on those? You're more likely to click on those because you think you're on a safe site. You think, well, I'm actually on the company's website. Therefore, these other ads, this other sponsored content must be okay. Now, as I'm talking about this, I realize that I have fallen victim to this because I have clicked on those, thinking and having that kind of mindset that, oh, okay, since I'm on New York Times website, I can scroll down and yes, or on our local news website and scroll down at the bottom and there's the sponsored stuff and you click on it because you're you're not thinking that that's going to be malvertising down there. And that's exactly what this is saying. It says some of these ads will only ensnare consumers who click on them, but in some cases people can be vulnerable in a more passive way, sometimes just by visiting an infected site, just by visiting. Oh my gosh. Corporate employees can also be targets. He cited a few examples that were recently uncovered involving big companies. Lowe's staff members were targeted via a Google ad for an employee portal, claiming to be associated with the retailer. Clicking on the link myloveslife.net, which contains a misspelling of the company's name, took users to a phishing page with Lowe's logo. This had the potential to confuse employees since many don't know offhand the URL for the internal website. So instead of being myloveslife.net, I guess this was myloveslife.net. And yeah, so that kind of stuff. I guess that's what they're talking about here. It's not clear. I wish they had written that way because, yeah, it's not clear that that's what's going on. But I think that that's what they're saying. It says you see the brand, even the official logo of that brand, and for you, it's enough to think it's real because they didn't realize they were clicking on myloveslife.net. I don't know. It says they also cited an ad meant to impersonate Salesforce-owned communication tool Slack. Initially, by clicking on the ad, he was redirected to a price page on Slack's official website. But suspecting bad actors were at play, he dug deeper and uncovered an impersonation ploy, which involved trying to convince unsuspecting users to download something purporting to be the Slack app. You guys, oh my gosh. It makes you just want to stay in the house and not even get on the internet. It's not Google's fault, but don't trust it. Don't trust Google. You can't trust Google anymore. Some of you are probably thinking, I never trusted Google to begin with, right? Malvertising is not new. It says, but cyber criminals are getting smarter and the ads are often so realistic that it's easy to be duped. The problem is exacerbated by the fact that so many people use and trust Google as a search engine. This is when I wish they had put the statistic in here. It makes your article so much more weighty if I can say, 90%, This is where many of the malicious ads can be found. It's not a problem with Google per se. Malicious ads can show up in queries using other search engines like Microsoft's Bing, of course. But why go after Bing when you can go after the top where everybody's going, which is Google? It's just that Google is such a widely used search engine and people trust it and let their guard down. When you see something appearing on a Google search, you kind of assume it's something valid. Yeah. I don't know. We need to have a name for that. Like assumed legitimacy or something. I don't know. Consumers can also fall prey to malicious ads on trusted websites they visit regularly. That was the example that I was talking about earlier when I'm saying, oh, well, maybe I'm on the New York Times site, and there's some ads up there. Many of these ads are legitimate, but some bad ones can slip through the cracks. It's like the post office. Does the mailman check every letter you get to make sure it's really from Publishers Clearinghouse? Like, no. Be careful about where and when you click. Consumers can take steps to protect themselves against malvertising attempts. For instance, they should avoid clicking on sponsored links that come up during an internet search. Okay, new rule, no clicking on sponsored posts, okay? Don't do that anymore. And some of you probably already knew this, right? But there are a lot of people who didn't. Who didn't. Often, the first ad below the sponsored post will be the product that they're looking for. Exactly. Usually, you just scroll down, it's right there. And since it isn't sponsored, there's less chance of being sidelined by malicious code or a phishing attempt. If you do click on a sponsored link, check the URL at the top of the webpage to make sure it's really where you meant to be before taking any other actions. Like, always do that. It's kind of like when you're checking for those phishing emails and you get ready to open it up and you see this from, jwhenthewindblows@gmail.com. And it's not, I don't know, the other site that you were trying to go to. It says, for example, if you're trying to visit gap.com, make sure you're really on gap.com. Consumers who find themselves on a suspicious site should close the window immediately. In most cases, this will avoid further trouble because you haven't clicked on anything yet on that site. Consumers also need to be careful about clicking ads they see on trusted websites. This is what I'm talking about. They may, for instance, see ads for products that are much lower in cost than elsewhere. They recommend not clicking on it and instead going to visit the trusted site of the product seller. Most of the time, consumers will be able to search on the product site if the special deal exists. All right. Also, avoid calling a telephone number listed in a sponsored ad. This is a new one for me. I've been talking about scams and fraud, but this is the first time I've really dug into this malvertising piece. Like, this is very different. I think this is something we need to pay a little bit more attention to. So don't just click on stuff. Don't just skip the sponsored post. It says avoid calling a telephone number listed in a sponsored ad because it could be a fake telephone number. Now, we've talked about fake telephone numbers before, spoofing, where you look at your cell phone and you go, oh, it's my bank. And it ain't your bank. If you call it, cyber thieves could gain access to your computer or personal information depending on the scheme. Consumers should make sure they are calling a number from official product documentation that they have in their possession. So, yeah, I don't know. Look at this thing. Is there a number on it? It says, alternatively, consumers could visit the company's homepage for this information. Go directly and independently verify on your own. Doing a web search could return results that are not sponsored by the company and telephone numbers that are associated with cyber criminals. And they are looking for you to find them. All it takes to get an ad out there is money. And of course, cyber criminals that are stealing money have the ability to pay for that bait. Okay, drive-by downloads. What are drive-by downloads? You guys, I'm gonna have to write that one. I'm gonna have to start keeping a list. Drive-by downloads. Today we're talking about what are drive-by downloads. I'm going to pull this out of this whole video just so I can say to people, here's what drive-by downloads are. It says here in the CNBC article that I'm going through, consumers should also make sure the operating system and internet browsers are up to date on their computer or mobile phone. Okay, yeah, we know that. So-called drive-by downloads, which can impact people who merely visit a website infected with malicious codes, generally rely on a vulnerability in the user's browser. This is not as much of a threat for people who keep their browsers and browser extensions up to date. So I've heard about something similar to this, where people can sort of mask cell towers. And so you can be walking by them and they're in their car and they have this cell tower machine. I don't know what it's called anymore. And you've got your Bluetooth on or something. And instead of connecting to the real cell tower, you connect to that cell tower in their car. Yeah, I'm telling you, the technology that's out there, and this is not even anything new that I'm talking about, but that was in another video. You'll have to go look that up. It says here, this is not so much of a threat for people who keep their browsers and browser extensions update. It says consumers could also consider installing anti-malware software on their computer and phone. And then you could get blockers. It says some consumers may also opt to install a privacy browser. Many privacy browsers have embedded ad blockers. Consumers may still see sponsored ads, but they will see fewer of them, which minimizes the chances of malvertising. You guys, who can keep up with all this? Consumers who come across suspicious ads should report them to the applicable search engine for investigation. This is just a lot here. It just really is. I think that's pretty much it. But yeah, so now we've got to double down on worrying about these Google searches and what we're clicking on, and not just the Google searches, because I think, to some extent we kind of already knew that. It's when we get to the website that we trust, and we think that the ads that are running up there, we don't really vet them as they're passing by. We just get sidelined because we go, "Oh, that's interesting," and when we click on that, "Oh, look at that," and then we click on that. And so we have to be more conscious in the actions that we take, and not just see the title that's designed to grab your interest, because that's what it is. We know it's clickbait titles that pull us away from being over here in the legitimate world and take us down into the web of the dark world where we don't want to be and where we get caught up in all of this malvertising. So there you go. This is a whole lot. I think I'll have to come back and do some more research on this. But again, just being mindful of where you are when you're on the internet and what you are clicking on. Even if it is a site that you trust, the ad that is up there, do not trust it necessarily. Do your research, trust but verify, use independent sources before you click on something, and don't even call the number. That's a lot. All right. If you learned a little bit more out of this, please don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss some of this absolutely fabulous and great content that's going to help us all be a little bit more safer in this world. All right. Mwah. Peace.